I don't really have an opening statement. We visited just a couple days ago. Obviously, we've had a couple padded practices, which have been good. Everything's going well at this time. Guys are handling the weather, working hard. We haven't had any issues one way or the other that are worth talking about. So we're just moving forward with kind of where we're at, and we've got a long ways to go. But we've got a good group, as I mentioned earlier. I'm excited. I like watching. I like what I see with the coaching, the interaction with the players, guys' effort, responsibility, the loyalty to each other and to team. And so I'm excited about where we're at, but we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Mike, you told us last year, like mid-season, before you realized how good you were. Do you have any sense for how good you might be at this point or could be?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, we weren't very good the first 4 or 5 or 6 games, and when you put it on the national platform, we were beat up. We couldn't practice very hard. We struggled to get through practice. We were playing freshmen that shouldn't have been on the field, but they had to be out there by default, so we had to adjust game plans offensively. Defense carried us. And once we got healthy and we started to practice the way that we're accustomed to practice, and we had some continuity, quarterback could get a feel for what's going on outside on the perimeter, I felt like we were pretty good because nobody could move the ball on us. And for the first time in my career, when we went into a game, I felt like we had a defense that could just stop people. And if we could just manage to score about 15 or 20 points, we could win. So it's so early right now in watching our defense, but I'm comfortable with our pass rush. We're young at linebacker. We can run. We can hit. We don't know a lot because we haven't had many quality reps. We're replacing some safeties in corners, but the corners have had a considerable number of quality reps. So I feel pretty comfortable in the back end. I feel comfortable with the coaches. I like the transition where we're at with Coach Mason and Joe Bob moving to linebackers. And then offensively, we are who we are. So now we have more depth than we've had at wideout. Helps us. Obviously, quarterbacks was here. Replacing Jalen Warren will be a task, but we've got guys that are out there running around and competing. And we're in a pretty good position up front right now at the offensive line. We're able to roll the first 2 groups in and be pretty consistent. Third group's getting quality reps, but they're young. So I feel good about our special teams. Our kickers, punters, and snappers are veterans. They've been around. So I feel good about where we're at. Predictions-wise, I don't know. We stay healthy. The team learns to care about each other. We could be pretty good.
Mike, back at the end of spring, because of all the injuries you had, particularly on the offensive line, the guys that were missing, you talked about you might have to amp things up physicality-wise earlier this fall than maybe you typically would. Has that been? Is that still kind of the focus as you try to build that physical nature of this team?
Yes, we've been very physical the last 2 practices. We lost a number of practices for 3 to 5 guys that need the physical aspect of the game, and so we're going to play a little catch up and see where we're at in about 10 practices, and then make a decision on whether we need to push forward with it or we can back off.
Are there 5 guys that you think will be the starters up there at this point, or is there some spots that are kind of open for competition right now?
I think there's 7 guys that have enough experience and we feel like they can play, that we could play at a really high level and play fast if we choose to, that we're comfortable with. I think we have 3 other guys that are coming along. They're learning the system. They're trying to adapt to who we are and what we do. They have the skill there. So I've said this for years. We need 3 guards, 3 tackles, and 2 centers. to make it through a season and hope that we don't ever get anything in, we don't have to go any further than that when you deal with maturity and experience and toughness. And I think we have that right now. So one of the challenges, in my opinion, in coaching and doing the best job possible as a head coach is how physical can you be, but then also try to keep everybody healthy, because we need them out there in the first game. And that's where we're at right now. So we have a number of guys. He's working some through at different positions, but we've got guys that rotate in with the ones and the twos that played a pretty significant number of snaps this year in quality games, which is better than where we were at last year.
In the spring, I know you talked about Caleb Etienne getting into shape, and he talked about that process today. What do you see in him now that he is out there on the field for fall camp?
Caleb still has a ways to go, but he's a completely different player right now. I'm not for sure, 40 pounds lighter maybe. I mean, he might be 50 pounds lighter, I'm not sure. But he's in condition now. He's been with us long enough that he understands who we are and how we practice. And so once he got his body under control, now his mind can get under control. Now he can think and play fast. And he's getting better every day. He looks much, much better. He was just a long ways off last year. He was a victim of the COVID. Really the last time he played up until he plays this year will be in high school. They didn't do much in junior college. And so when he showed up, he just had a long ways to go. But he's doing much better at this time.
Mike, one of the things I was anxious to see today, day 4, practice 4, second day in pads, sometimes offensive linemen will kind of go through the motions a little bit. It's hot, but especially talking about Caleb, but really Preston, a bunch of those guys, their energy level was really high today. Do you monitor that pretty closely?
Well, that's really what I watch now. I mean, obviously I don't coach, and I'm watching those things, and that's very important with where we're at. It was interesting. Some of the skill was dragging, and the big guys were doing good today, which is the opposite, as you mentioned. I will say that Coach Glass mentioned in our staff meeting a week ago that he felt like we were in really good physical condition, and he doesn't say that much. It's hard to get that out of him, so that made me feel good. And he gauges most of that on the big guys, because the skill kids are going to come along. I mean, they're the most athletic, and so once they get adjusted, they'll be fine. But so far, we're holding up front with our big guys.
As a four-year starter at quarterback, obviously Spencer's a bit of a unicorn in today's college football world. Is there a way just to quantify how valuable it is to have a guy that experienced taking the snaps?
Well, just what you said is true. There's no substitute for experience and reps. And he's really good at what we do. And he can run any play in our system. All of our really fast plays that we have, which we have a lot now. I think we have 47 of them. And he can run them without even being coached at this point, in my opinion. And he's come a long ways. It's interesting. We have a really simple offense, except for the quarterback. Quarterback takes time. And once they get it, they all of a sudden get better. And it only happens from making mistakes and reps. And unfortunately, a lot of times it happens when they make mistakes in games. And as they grow, and I've said this for a number of years, I played, 5, 6, 7 games as a true freshman. And then about halfway through my true sophomore year, we played Colorado out here. And it was the first time I felt comfortable. And I think I was in maybe game 8 to 10. I don't know what it was. And then I thought all the other stuff was a blur to me. And so he's had a lot of experience now. The game has changed completely. It's much more difficult to play quarterback now than when I played. Much more difficult. And so that experience is really important. And he's tough. He's been beat up. He's been hit on. And so he gets it, and he's okay.
Mike, have you figured out if there's any nuance to coaching your son? Have you figured all that out, or did it come pretty easy for you when Gunner first went into the program?
In what area?
Any area. I mean, just whether it's, I know I want to train the same, but it's difficult for me to do it.
Well, it's extremely difficult for both of us. But what I do is I just stay away. So I'm not down there, I'm not around the quarterbacks. Tim does a great job. And so it's best for me to stay away from them and let him coach them and let them function throughout the day. Let him make quarterbacks of freshman mistakes, make mistakes of freshman quarterback mistakes, and then let him grow and develop without me down there being involved in it. So I don't know if I'm right because it's the first time I've done it. I just stay away and just let it all take place and don't really get involved in it. And I think that's the best way to handle it.
You catch yourself when you're home with him saying, I'd really like to talk to you about this or that, but maybe that's.
No, I talk to him. I mean, he doesn't live at home. He comes there and gets food and leaves, but we don't talk much football at home. Now, the young one, he wears me out on it, but Gunner and I don't really talk much football. Now, if I'm passing him around in the facility, it's the same thing with Spencer. I was second practice, I was down there on the field for a little bit, and I was talking to Spencer about some stuff, and I talked to Rangel about certain things. And if I see something that I know or I think is wrong, then I'll mention it, just like I would most of the other guys, and we'll talk about it. And it's almost in passing. We don't really stop and talk about it much.
Coach,
What is it? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, what do you talk to him about then? You talk to him about life?
Well, Gunner doesn't talk much. Gunner is very quiet and to himself, and he just doesn't. He doesn't really talk much about anything. He studies football, goes to school, got his his friends he hangs out with, and that's it. So he's an easy one to raise. I've got three sons, and each one of them are completely different. And he doesn't really talk much. He lives in his own world. If he needs something, he wants to talk about football. He might find me and talk about it, but it's pretty rare.
What is it
Everybody
like?
wants to be proud of their kids. One thing about him that I've watched as he's come up is his work ethic. I mean, Dave Hunziker asked him today, what'd you clock, or what do you run the 40 in? And he goes, well, they hand timed me at 4.6 at the end of summer camp. I mean, you realize that 4.6 came with a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it didn't come naturally, and it's what we want. I mean, Kristen and I want our kids to work hard and be productive and do the very best they can with the tools that they've been given, and we try to guide them in that direction. And hopefully they have a work ethic that allows them to be successful in life, whatever it is they do. So, fortunately, we've instilled that in him. He is a hard worker. He does it on his own. And so for that reason, that makes me comfortable and makes me feel good about his upbringing. Forget player coach, just his upbringing and where he's at with his work ethic. He came out of high school as a 4.85 guy. And he's 4.6 flat now, which is pretty good. So that was all his work. And they all do, they work. Spencer went from 4.75 to 4.55. I just looked the other day at Rangel's numbers. Rangel went from, I think his first bench was 190, and I noticed that he was at I think 215 or 220 the other day, and his numbers went from, he was a 4.94, and I think he ran a 4.82 or something. So when they work hard, they're going to progress. With Coach Glass, they're going to get better.
What is that like? I know you all have several Oklahoma Preps kids in general on roster, but especially with Gunner and several of his Stillwater teammates. What is that like kind of with that natural transition from growing up around the university to then having them on the team?
So from day one, I wanted to have a partnership with Stillwater High School coaches and their players. They're right here. And we should have an academic partnership as a university with the high school, in my opinion. I don't control the academic side of it, but from a football standpoint, the Stillwater High School coaches are welcome over in our facility at our practices, watching our video in our meetings anytime they want to come. That's been since I've been here. And just a natural progression when I have boys that they're playing in high school and they come to watch practice, they bring their buddies. So they'll come trailing into practice. Well, you see Gage come in now. He's got 4 or 5 buddies with him. And they come into practice and they watch and they see things. That's productive. That's good. It's good that they're in that environment and they're learning, they're watching, they want to be there. To me, that's productive. And so we've got a pretty good pipeline going with walk-ons now that are on our team. We might have as many as 5 now that are have decided to come here and be a walk-on and compete, which I think is a positive thing for Oklahoma State and the football and the high school and the community.
You mentioned you were bringing Trace along kind of slowly through camp.
Mhm.
How big is it going to be to get him back next year? Just knowing through the journey he's had the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's a challenge mentally, right? You know, you get injured and then you get injured again, and it can be I guess traumatic is probably a little extreme, but it can be a difficult experience when you take something away from somebody that they really love to do. That's tough on young people. It's tough on adults. And it happened to him, and then he was all ramped up and ready to go, and then it happened again. And so I was really worried about him coming back. You know, he's got a good upbringing, he's got good support, but still it's not easy. And he's healthy now, he feels good, so we're bringing him along slow. We'll give him a little more next week. And then the third week, we'll put him in there in some contact and get him some action, and then we'll get him into game week. And I believe when we play the game and we turn him loose, I think he'll play.
Did you have a lot of contact with him last year as he's trying mentally to kind of stay involved?
We had a number of people that have worked with him, not only as doctors, but people checking on him, his position coaches, Rashedi Jones and director, player personnel. When I would see him around, I would stop and ask him, "How you doing? How's everything going?" He did some of the procedures and medical work that he had done was in Tulsa. He was going back and forth, and I'd ask him how it's going and how they feel about him, and so just touching base with him. He's quiet too. He doesn't talk much. It's hard to get him to really talk a lot, but I think I know he's in a much better place now than he was at this time last year.
Did you know he started going to road games on his own?
And I didn't know that. That's good. So that's good information. I didn't know that. I guess I probably should have said I did know that, but I didn't know that. He might have used NIL for gas money. I know he's been cutting grass for money, so.
Mike, last year you mentioned the defense sort of carried the offense early until they got their footing. Is your offense this year in a situation where it could carry the defense if the defense needs it?
They're in a much better position now than we were last year, let's put it that way. I don't foresee that happening. I don't think that needs to happen. I think they'll really play well together. And I said this when I met with you guys a few days ago. It's a little unrealistic for us to expect them to start where they left off last year, because last year they were legitimately in the top 5 in the country, in my opinion. And when you lead the nation in sacks and have multiple games in conference play where you have over 6 or 7 sacks, it's pretty awesome. So I think they're going to play really well. I really do, defensively. And offensively, we're further ahead now from a health standpoint, certainly. And then I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. The replacement issue is Jalen Warren, because he was a really good player for us. If you go back and you guys watch it, but I have the luxury of stopping it and looking and then starting it and stopping it. And he made a lot of yards when there really wasn't yards there sometimes. That's where the replacement is at this point.
With Dominic Richardson in that role, does he do all the things necessary to be an every down back if you need him to be one, whether it's the running and the pass blocking and all the different things that a guy needs to do in that role?
His skill set, yes, he's thick enough and physical enough to do that. Now, I've also said this now the number of years that it takes more than one at this level, because those guys take a lot of hits. And now he is physical. He's mature. He's been around a while, which is going to help him. He's a different runner, different type of runner. He's more of a slasher. He's going to drop his pads and try to run through somebody and then take off and go. But we need him to be durable. I don't worry about his attitude. I don't worry about his toughness. We just need him to be durable and to give us, if he needs to give us 18 carries a game. And then the other guys are going to have to help. We're going to have to play 3 backs. We just haven't had the luxury You guys would know much better than I would, but I don't know when the last year we had a back that played all year long. I can't remember that we didn't have to play a second team and a third team back during the season.
When you look at the guys that you've got behind Dominic, are there, because of the lack of experience at this level, are there things that you're looking for in particular in practice?
Nothing more other than just being able to function in what we ask them to do. And then when you have inexperienced players at a particular position, the coordinator and that position coach have to come together and come up with a good plan that when these guys are in, this is what they do best. Don't ask them to do something that they're not capable of doing at this point in their career, whatever it's for, based on physicality, youth, could be route running, catching. So it's a little more difficult on a coordinator, like it was on Dunn last year, the first 3 or 4 games, when we were trying to run our offense with zero experience on the perimeter, which is way off from what we do. We rely on those guys in a lot of ways, and he didn't have that. So between him and Waz, when Dom is out, if he's catching his breath, we need to have plays we go to that the other guys have a chance for success. Don't ask them to do what they can't get accomplished.
You speak in terms of what Jalen gave you, Mike, last year, and the key in terms of your offensive progress maybe lies with who steps up for him. Is that replacing Malcolm for you on defense? Is it the same kind of impact, or is that
Probably more difficult. I thought Malcolm was the best defensive player in the country as a stand-up guy. The guy at Baylor and the guy at Georgia that just pushed the offensive line back in the quarterback's lap. I mean, those guys are really valuable. But for a stand-up guy on a second level, I thought he was the best player in the country. And so it's extremely difficult to replace him. We're not going to replace him this year. That's not going to happen. I mean, we're going to run guys out there, but we're not going to. These guys aren't in that position in their careers right now to replace him. That doesn't mean we can't take up slack in other areas, but you were at all the games probably. He's fantastic. I mean, those guys in Detroit, they're head over heels over him as we speak.
So you hit on him. So what do you do? I mean, is it doing others around that position doing more until?
Well, everybody's got to do their job, and we can all of us can only do so much. So the young guys, Cobb and Benson and Cedric and Nick, those guys have to play the very best they can in their world. They can't do more than they can do. But I'm just saying, for me to sit here and say that we have somebody that's going to step in and do what he did last year, they should just cut the cameras off. They're not ready right now, but they're going to be good. They're going to play good, and they're going to play hard, and they're going to play in our system.
You've got a guy at the third level that is just scratching the surface, just his second year, but physically, Kendall Daniels he looks the part in every way. What's been your impression of how he's coming along?
He's making really good strides. He falls in the same category. He's a really good prospect and didn't have any experience. He's going to gain experience, and he's going to get better. He's going to make mistakes, and he's going to get better. His attitude is fantastic. His body is what I'm guessing NFL would dream of for a safety. And but he's inexperienced. But he's been tough. He's got some natural skills that we can't coach. And he's got a body. We just need to get him out there and let him play. And we have to be patient with him. We have to be patient with our linebackers. We have to coaching is understanding who you have out there, who you're coaching, and understand that they're going to make mistakes. We have to correct them. And they're going to make more mistakes, and we have to correct them again. And then we got to keep them playing hard.
Mike, why do you think John Paul Richardson was so lightly recruited? When you guys started using him early, he made plays. When you fall through the cracks?
When we saw him, his dad's Bucky, right? So when I had a conversation with Bucky a year before we offered him, and he mentioned to me, as a dad, because he and Gunner were pretty much the same age, that because I would ask him about him, and he would give me I said, just tell me about him, and he said, you're going to get a tough kid, who can play a lot of positions, who's had success, and the ball always is around him, and he makes plays. And, in high school they played him at quarterback, played wide receiver. And so we kind of followed him. And there wasn't a lot on tape, numbers-wise, to make people jump on him and want to offer him. And I think there was some, not doubt, but there was some curiosity to actually how fast he was. And so we offered him. I think we offered him in. I was on the road recruiting when we did, so it had to be in the fall, because we can't be out in the spring. And we thought he was fast enough, and we offered him. And then it wasn't much longer that he committed to us. And then he went to a camp somewhere, these camps they go to, and he ran a 4.51. And then other people started to slowly offer him after that. Fortunately, we had built a relationship with him and Bucky, and we were able to get him. But to answer your question, there's a long answer for I don't think people were really sure of his speed.
Similar question, but with Jaden Bray, what did you guys see out of him in the recruiting process that's got him?
Had him in camp. Casey and them had him in camp young. I don't know, how old was he? A sophomore maybe? And loved him. He played his senior year, and they didn't throw a lot of passes, I think. The year before that, they had Cade Horton was the quarterback at Norman. We called him Boo. And so he got the ball quite a bit. And then when Cade went to college, I don't think they threw a lot of passes the next year to him, so he just kind of stayed unnoticed. But he came to camp, I want to say, as a sophomore. And when he showed up, I vaguely remember Dunn and them saying it was a no-brainer. Now, I could be off on part of that because there's been a lot of days since then. But I think I'm pretty close.
He grew up playing basketball, and he said that he was a little behind route running and technique-wise whenever he first got here. How far along has he come in those aspects?
So, we played him last year more than we should have. He wasn't ready to play last year, but he helped us win a few games. And he's just out there running around. Now he understands technique, he understands body control, he understands eye placement. He has a decent feel for coverages and things. And so he should come along considerably faster this year than he did last year because he's been out there. His heart's beating out of his chest, he's sweating, he's tired, and he's used to all that now. So his route running skills and his understanding of how the game's played is considerably better than it was. Well, last year at this time, he was just out there. Now he has a clue what's going on.
When talking with Cobb today, he mentioned one of the benefits of having Joe Bob back there is he feels that his pass rushing ability has improved with Joe Bob. Is that something you kind of envisioned with moving Joe Bob back to the second, that second line because he had so much success on the defensive line coaching them up?
I didn't hear your first part, but you were asking a part of the transition in moving him back to linebackers coach?
Mason specifically said that he's felt his pass rushing ability has improved under Joe Bob. Is that something that you kind of envisioned with making that move?
Not as much that as I did. I wanted to keep continuity on that side of the ball, and Joe Bob is a very smart coach, and he played that position at some point in his career. And so I thought it would benefit our players for two things. One, to have a coach that's been in the system coach them so they can speak the same language. And then two, personally for his career, I thought it was better for Joe Bob to get out of the defensive line and get back in the second level so he could learn what's going on back there if he wants to move on in his career and potentially be a coordinator. I never told him that, but I just think that's good for his career. But when I asked him if he'd coach linebackers, he said, sure, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And I said, I'd like for you to coach linebackers. But I think that it's good for those young guys. So the young guys we just talked about, like if Malcolm and Harper were there, then anybody could coach them to a certain extent. You just give them a play and let them go. These young guys need a lot, and to bring somebody from the outside in that doesn't understand our language, our terminology, and have him learning and them learning could set us back. So that's why I made the transition, and personally, I thought it was good for his career.
Mike, Head Stewart's leaving the Big 12. How important is that job?
It's very important.
What's been your interaction with him and other people in that job?
Ed's been fantastic. Ed's a former player. He gets it. He's a good communicator. He's intelligent. He's very level-headed, easy to talk to. Lets things slide down his back, doesn't take things personal. He's been great for this league. He's been good for Oklahoma State. And I've enjoyed my relationship with him. I need to text him. I haven't done that. I hated to see him leave our conference, but I'm guessing it was a great opportunity for him out there. With the new commissioner, as I said earlier, I don't need to get into. I think he's going to be fantastic. And I think what could happen is a lot of times when you change commissioners, it's kind of like head coaches maybe. You know, before it's all said and done, he might have people he's bringing in. Ed might know that. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But I know Ed's been fantastic for us, and I wish him nothing but the best.
And when you say he's been fantastic for you, what kind of stuff has he done for anybody?
He's the communicator. So anytime there was issues, good or bad, things that needed to be changed from a compliance side to making sure pregame that their team stays on the 40 and our team stays on the 40. I mean, he kind of had all of it. He did everything. He had a lot to do with our meetings, set them up. He's very organized, very well-spoken, and he's very intelligent when it comes to being well-rounded in what we do. So he communicated with us all the time. And I mean, if it wasn't one thing, it was another. He would text me, Coach, what do you think about this? Big 12 has to vote. Give me your opinion on this. And we just had a good line of communication. And I just thought he was great for this league.
Couple more for Coach.
Mike, when you look back at that group of receivers that were true freshmen last fall, and like you said many times, they were pushed into a situation that maybe they might not have been ready for. But at the same time, were they progressing maybe faster than than typical true freshman at that position to be able to handle what they did handle?
Well, the first thing is there's no might. They weren't ready, okay? Are you asking me, did they progress faster during the season?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yes, because they had to. And so we all do it. Like when we're forced into something that we're not ready for, we naturally progress in that if we like to do it. The tough thing about this game is the physical aspect of it. A lot of times your body's not ready for it, which I think just about every one of those guys at some point missed 2 or 3 games because they got injured. That's why I'm not a big fan of playing freshmen unless we get into a desperation mode. What I like to do is what we did with James Washington, where he comes in and plays 8, 10, 12 plays a game. And then we bring him along, and toward the end of his freshman year, we started playing him more. But he had gone through August, September, October. We started to get into November, and he started playing 25, 30, 40 plays a game. But we brought him to that level. We just didn't throw him out there and put him in a difficult situation. That's really a progression that I'm more comfortable with.
Is Colin Oliver's transformation from 1 year and 25 pounds of weight gain in a good way something shocking to you with how fast he did it from 1 year to the next?
Yes, it is. I mean, I don't need to talk about Coach Glass and what he does. Everybody knows what he does, but, I mean, he doesn't even look like the same person. It'd be interesting if they knew what we know now, how heavily recruited would he have been? He'd been a 5-star, wouldn't he? So we had a home run on him, and he needs to continue on. And I've had some discussions with him. Colin is very mature, and he takes care of himself. He's got great work ethic, and if I were talking to him like I would my own kids, I would say as long as you stay humble and understand where you came from and how you got to where you are and keep with your work ethic, you're going to play this game a long time. And I think he'll do that. But for him to change his body like he did, in particular that he didn't redshirt. Because the guys that are in this incoming class that aren't going to be in the two deep, they lift and train differently with Coach Glass than the guys that are and playing. So he didn't lift heavy during the season because he was playing. So August, September, October, November, December, he didn't lift heavy compared to if he would have been a guy that wasn't on the field, his workload in the weight room would have been considerably different, and he would have had one more additional day a week. So he's just getting started. It wouldn't surprise me. What do we have him listed at now? What do we say he weighs? 45?
Yeah, so he played at 220 last year, 240.
Okay, so it would not surprise me at this time next year if he's 260. Because he hadn't lifted heavy. He's a good one, no doubt. What else?
Brock Martin, he could have called it, and he decided to come back to play for you for another year. What does he mean for this defense? I know it's different positions in Malcolm where he can't be replaced, but what does Brock mean to this defense?
Yeah, Brock will probably apply for another year. You know the story last year. He dislocated his elbow, and the doctors, I probably told you this story, but it's worth telling again. I think it's really good for young people to hear this story. The doctors, we walked off the field, and they said, I heard it, so I knew something was wrong. And I said, that's not good, is it? And they said, no, he's dislocated his elbow, and it's back in now. And I said, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, probably 6 weeks. So I'm adding up in my brain what 6 weeks is, game-wise. And, then the next week, he tried to play, and he wanted to play. And so the doctors wouldn't let him, and then he came to me, and I said, I'm not going to let you. I'm not a doctor, for one thing, and you can't play. The next week, they signed him off, and I think it's either the next week or the next, I can't remember, he played. And he should have been out 6 weeks, and he was only out like 10 days or 12 days or something. And he put that brace on his elbow and played. But Brock loves competition, and he loves Oklahoma State, and he loves to be in the games. I mean, he's an ex-wrestler, raised in small-town Oklahoma with salt-of-the-earth parents. He's raised with mental toughness. He doesn't know any different. And he would apply for another year. He really would. He loves playing. I hope he gets a shot to bang around and play in the league a little bit. I mean, I don't know who. That's out of my hands, but his experience is invaluable to our guys because when they get hot, when they get tired, when things get tough, he can tell them it's in his own words, it's going to be fine. Let's forget about this. I mean, he's the guy that makes the plays at the end of the game a lot of times, right? Everybody else is tired, and he's just mentally tougher than his opponent. He just never shuts down. That play he made in the Fiesta Bowl where he reached around and grabbed him, pulled him down from behind. It's an unbelievable play that he made toward the end of the game. So he's a special Cowboy, and he always will be.